thing. So you got back into the festival scene, and this time you're with the artists.
And
Picking
this
up
time I was
there.
with the artist. So yeah, I got a hookup with my lover, and it was just such a different experience because I've been to one of these festivals before,
Hmm.
and it was so overwhelming. The stimulation everywhere, and just the people like really off their rockers was pretty overwhelming. So I was like, I'm never going back to this specific festival again. I don't need to. And then I meet this love who this festival is a massive part of his life, and he's been like helping with the curation of it for the last
Hey.
decade. So it was kind of breaking his heart that I had this view of it, and he was just like, let me show you this other way. So he like got me a ticket, took care of everything.
Oh,
And yeah, I was just camped around all of these lovely artists and made a bunch of beautiful connections and really got to see the ritual elements of it as well. And I was
mhm.
pretty surprised at that, I will say, because there's really cool performances at festivals usually. That's just a no-brainer, it's especially at the
Mhm.
big ones. But these performances were true ceremonies, and they took their
Mm.
time weaving the stories and weaving the magic. It was so inspirational, and yeah, I'm curious to go back next year, perhaps, if it feels right,
Okay.
and be a little bit more involved in it and bring a little bit more of the witchy ways to that scene.
Mm. I love. That's so beautiful. Okay, before we jump into more of this juicy deliciousness, an intro. All right, everyone. So today on the podcast, we have the beautiful Aubrey Aurora, and I had the honor and the deliciousness of participating in one of Aubrey's containers this year, Rites of Renaissance, and it was so playful and yummy and so many epic humans, and I really, really enjoyed my time. But actually, and I don't know if you know this, Aubrey, maybe you do, the way that I came across your work was when you were promoting the Florence experience, Erotic Renaissance. What was the name?
Mhm, mhm.
Yes. And of course, the algorithm knows these days. So it like came on my feed somehow. And I saw this event and I had this moment of like, oh, this is exactly what I've been. It was so crazy. I'm like, wait, I've like journaled this event in so many different ways. And then to see that it was being created and offered in the world. And it was at the exact same time as we were doing Pussified that year, actually. So I was like, oh my God, I can't even go. And I think Diane Neroli was also participating. And I was connected with her through I think Juicy's program through the Juicy Revolution. And so there were all these things, and I was like, wow, okay, obsessed with this woman, fell in love. And that's how I entered your orbit.
Oh my
And
god.
yeah, it was amazing. And I actually have some questions about that event that we'll get to as we go more and
Well,
more into
can I
this.
say something right now just
Yes,
because it's
yes, say
sensitivity
all the
month?
things. We have no protocol.
Yeah, this morning I was like in the mirror doing my makeup, and I was dreaming about the next Erotic Renaissance event because when I birthed that, my OG plan was to have it be an annual thing.
Mhm.
Uh, Lo and behold, it takes a lot of freaking work to put on a international week-long retreat in a castle all by oneself. So the annual thing was a little bit ambitious, but I'm
Mhm.
now in the stage of like, okay, let's birth one for next year. So I'm
Mhm.
starting to envision who I want as performers and collaborators. And, truly feel that I'm looking at one of my top choices right now.
Oh my God, we love. Let's definitely talk more about this. This is exciting. I love this. I love creative collaboration, bringing together international experiences. And I'm sure if you're listening, watching to this, there's likely you have a thread of that in you. So we're going to get into some of that in today's conversation. But I want to introduce Aubrey, and I am going to read it because even though I'm great at memorizing, I don't want to butcher this. And it's beautiful. So Aubrey Aurora is a ritualist who has spent the better half of a decade curating luxury erotic experiences in the form of international retreats, events, and intimate private sessions. We really definitely want to dig into some of those juicy private sessions. With a background steeped in occultism and neo-tantra, sex magic is the foundation of all her offerings. Her passion lives in embracing pleasure as prayer, along with weaving the sacred and profane in ways that release stigmas around what much of society views as taboo. Yes, we need so much more of that. I'm so grateful that you're doing this work. Three fun and unexpected facts about Aubrey. Love these. She grew up Catholic in the Bible Belt, storm chasing. I'm like, wait, literal storm chasing? Like, we have to get into this a little bit more. She wound up in Canada. Just so curious about that whole trajectory. She's had her own full time business since she was 20, which is so impressive. Congratulations. What a fucking accomplishment as a fellow business owner. Yes, 100%. I always say that business was the spiritual initiation I did not know I was getting myself into. And lo and behold, here we are 4 years later. Five? Four. And she's a bit of an escape artist. And I actually would love to start with that one. Escape artist, physically, magic, in the realm of the imagination, in all of them, because you do a lot of work around romanticism and creativity and creating these immersive, romantic, erotic, delicious experiences, which I think some could view as a form of escapism, right? I've had this accused thrown at me. I love to travel. I want my whole life to be, I have this line in my first movie that was like, do it for the story, right? I'm like, doing it for the story, right? Like it's for the lore, it's for the myth of it. And I think often people view this as some kind of like a negative thing, like, ooh, you're trying to like escape your reality. But so tell me more
Mhm.
about that. What is your relationship to escapism, both in the physical? I'm imagining like ropes and, chains, and also in the emotional, the imaginal.
Yeah, well, you kind of hit the nail on the head. That is my playful way of speaking to my avoidant attachment style, which I think also plays into these mechanisms of escaping reality. And yeah, I think a lot of people view this as a negative. It's like, how many times have you heard that, wake up, stop living in your fairy tale fantasy, the
Be
fairy tale
realistic.
real, be realistic. It's like, how boring is that?
No,
And
thank
when
you.
you're I know, I'm like, okay, you're not the one for me. Bye. Um, and we are living proof that the fairy tales are, in fact, quite real and beyond our imaginings. And I did grow up in the Bible Belt in a town where I felt like such an alien. I had so many adults telling me when I was a kid, these are the best days of your life. Enjoy it while you can. And that was so freaking depressing to me. I was like, this is the best it's going to get? Oh, God. And thank the gods they were wrong. But because that was my reality then, I had my head buried in books
Mm,
constantly. My mom,
me
she's
too.
so sweet. She would come home from work and she would bring me like 3 books at a time because I would just
Mm,
devour them so quick. And of course, they were all fiction and based in these like fantasy realms where magic and fairies were abound.
mm,
And that world felt like home to me. The day-to-day life in the Bible Belt in Oklahoma did not feel like home to me. And so now that I'm an adult, I have had the opportunity and the courage and the audacity to create these mythic experiences, these fantasy worlds in my reality. And that was a massive part of what we worked with in the erotic renaissance and rites of renaissance is bring your fantasies into actuality and
Mhm.
know that that is possible and that you can do so in such beautiful ways that are going to blow your mind.
Mhm.
So that's one element of my escape artistry is, yeah, for sure, like diving deep into these otherworldly realms, both just to, you know, yeah, escape this world, but also to be inspired to bring more of that into
Mhm.
so that hopefully one day, for whoever wants that to be their reality, it doesn't seem like such a far fetched idea.
Yeah.
The other element is my avoidant attachment style.
Mhm.
And this is something that I've got to track in my love life and really work on and hone. And I like to feel and think that I'm getting a little bit more conscious with it and able to catch myself in those patterns of running away when things are uncomfortable or if things are getting too deep, if intimacy is like really facing me in the eyes. It's it's a lot and it's not always easy, and my go-to is to kind of hit the road when that
Mhm.
happens. And so I've been able to spank myself a little bit out of those
Mhm.
patterns as a romantic too, and just being like, girl, what are you doing? You're running away
Mhm.
from the thing that you feel and you say you want the most. Well, here it is.
Yeah.
Face it. Take it.
Yeah. I love all of that so much. Especially this bit of like recognizing your own avoidant attachment style. And what I hear when I hear all of that is such an act of alchemy, right? It's like, okay, I'm so aware that this is a part of my being. And through it, I can create these experiences where I do get to escape, but in reality they're also bringing me closer to that which I desire, though I'm even though I might subconsciously push it away. And I'm curious if when you began this work, were you already aware of your avoidant attachment style? Was it something that came up as you began to do the work? What was that journey like?
I had little tidbits of knowledge around it, but it wasn't until about 4 years ago. I was traveling in Greece and I was doing it solo. I was like nestled in the northern mountains of Greece and I was working with this mentor. And she asked me a question someday of like, do you enjoy massages and spa
Mm.
experiences? And I was like, oh, yeah, I actually just booked a bathhouse for next week. I'm stoked. And she called me out on that as one of the elements of escapism, of just like melting away from the world. And so
Mm.
that was really I feel like the starting point where I got called out on it. And then I started
Mhm.
noticing it more. And the partner that I was with at that time, we had been together for quite a while. And when you're with somebody long term, I at least find it can be harder to rewire patterns because
Mm.
you're familiar with your ways, you've become comfortable in certain dynamics. And so that relationship ended. And since then, with the lovers that I've had, I've noticed way more these patterns that play out within myself and have been able to
Mm.
catch them much more quickly. And as you say, alchemize them to bring myself back to this space of being
Mhm.
open to love as I say I want to do and how I really wish to be. Um, so I would say like the last 2 years has really
Mhm.
been going deep into that. I feel like before that I was aware, but I wasn't really making the choice to put in the work, or I just wasn't ready to do it. I'm not
Mhm.
quite, but now I'm noticing it, and I feel like I have the tools and I have the desire to change because
Mhm.
I'm actually ready for the kind of depth of love that being so open to it offers us.
Mhm. What I love is that even before it was necessarily like front and center in your consciousness, you were already doing this kind of work. And I just think it's fascinating how sometimes, whether intentionally or unintentionally, because I do think that there is an intelligence of the body, of the being, and an artistry to be able to be like, okay, maybe this is something that's somewhere within me, a wound or a pattern or a karmic imprint. There's some friction there. But at the same time, I'm able to create experiences or containers or pathways into what it is that I'm consciously desiring in a way that's a little bit more, I don't want to say controlled, but like known, right? Because there's a difference between going into a guided or a curated experience versus like really like being face to face with like raw life as it is, where it's like, okay. And that to me, that's, there's like a magic in that, that's like, it doesn't matter necessarily what my like human small self is dealing with. There's a larger kind of like thrust at work that's going to take me where I need to go anyway.
Hmm. Yeah, we can intellectualize things all we want, and I'm a nerd. I love geeking out about the psychology of sex and love, and
Yeah.
yet there's so many so freaking simple teachings that
Hmm.
until we've lived it and we really experience it, and maybe it takes 100 times of experiencing
Hmm.
that thing, but then to have the moment where it just drops in and suddenly it's no longer just a concept or an intellectualization of something, it's actually an embodied knowing and
Yes.
sensation of that thing. And that's when I think we can really start moving into the next steps of working with that and living from that place.
Hmm. Yeah. I love that. I love that. I mean, that's so much of why I personally also love experiences as like my creative offering to the world, right? Like experience, the art form of curating an experience is, it's so like juicy to me because it's amazing. It's wild. Like whether it is a festival environment that like, becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and starts to have its own kind of like energetic field around it, or it is a gathering of friends, or like you said, you just came from doing a private experience for a couple, whether it's something that intimate, there's something super beautiful about experiences. And I'm curious about like what drew you to offering experiences. You do them in so many different kinds of containers. Um, yeah, did you always know that it was something that you loved? Did you love to host? Are you a performer? Like what is your relationship to experiences as transformative vehicle?
I I love creating spaces, and it's been an interesting journey. Like my journey started by offering one-on-one sessions to people with energy work like 10 years ago in Nova Scotia. I was one of the co-founders of this holistic healing center there, and all of the clients who were coming to see me were asking for support in their sensuality or reinvigorating passion into their relationships. And I was like, I don't know if if every Reiki practitioner is experiencing the same thing. And I've always been very centrally
Mhm.
curious. So I was like, okay, let's start niching down. And I started apprenticing with a neo-tantra master at that time too. And then my sessions turned into like a couple hours long ceremonies. And
Mhm.
it's just evolved from there. And 2020 happened and everything had to move online. So that
Mhm.
also made and allowed my work to become a little bit more doused in the intellectual side of things and the study
Mhm.
of all these concepts, which I really enjoy. Uh, and it's been experimenting. And I was kind of giggling the other day because the the most successful launch that I ever did of an offering or a program was about polarity and the dark masculine.
Mhm.
And it's kind of one of those, or was one of those hot topics. It's
Mhm.
sell. It's easy to promote that kind of thing because it invigorates women's minds especially. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of people online doing those polarity teachings and
Mhm.
relationships and yada yada. And it's it's easy. And like I knew how to, I don't want to use the word manipulate, but I knew how to
Mhm.
promote this in a way where it was like people were flooding in. And
Mhm.
it didn't really align with my values. Like, it was fun and it was sexy, and I
Mhm.
created it in a way that had my flavor in it, definitely. But I'm in a place now where I am much less interested in like the sort of fast fashion of the spiritual realm
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
sort.
Mhm.
That means that my courses are not selling out anymore, which is fine.
Mhm.
But the courses that are being developed are so juicy and rich and unique.
Yeah.
And my my goal with online work is, how can I bring this gift and this love for creating atmospheres for
Mhm.
people to the virtual realm. It's very
Mhm.
easy to create atmospheres and sexy experiences for people in person, and I do that a lot here in
Yeah.
Vancouver, sometimes Italy. But there, it's beautiful to connect with the online community and
Mhm.
global as well. So that's been what I've been experimenting with the last few years, is this sort of entanglement of study and
Mhm.
research and the practices that we can do, but also curating an atmosphere, like having the
Mhm.
right music, having a beautiful art piece displayed with an evocative quote every time people enter the Zoom room, and just getting creative and, yeah, really exploring what works and what doesn't work. And yeah, so I kind of forget the original question, but basically, I love creating atmospheres and these really evocative environments for
Yeah.
people to play in, and not tell them what's supposed to happen for them
Yeah.
or how to do something. Rather,
Yes.
create this environment for them to have their own experience
Yes.
from.
Yes. Yes. I always describe it as, I love to create the playgrounds, right? Like in my mind, I'm sort of like, there's three main spaces. There's like a classroom space, there's a workshop space, and there's a playground space. And I love to just create the playground and then kind of just like sit back and watch what happens and allow people to have their own experience. Um, and I think that that's really beautiful. And you touched on two things in that answer of this creating something that was still true and meaningful but maybe not most aligned with what your gifts and what you want to offer to the world it was is. I don't even know what the beginning of that sentence was to make it make sense, but we flow with it. And the role of creativity in developing these, right? Because that is the heart of a lot of what we talk about in this podcast. And for me, the kind of guests that I bring on all kind of have this thrust of like what I call the visionary artistes, right? It's like, okay, they're able to like receive vision that maybe the world hasn't yet caught up to, right? So maybe it's not the hottest selling, or maybe it's not going to cater to the masses, but the people that it speaks to get it, right? The ones that want it. And I love that so much. And I love even that you named it, that it's like, okay, there's a version of a course that's like, well, I can see why this would sell easily. Like people are wanting this, people are talking about this. I can do it that way. Or I can do it in a way that is also an expansion for my own soul. And I'm curious if you could speak more to that. Like, have you had other experiences of that? Is that something you learned over the course of business? How does that play into how you create now?
I I'm truly just experimenting, and I get some I do pay attention to feedback, what's
Mhm.
resonating with people the most, what's not working. And this autumn I was trying to decide between if I wanted to run Rites of Renaissance again,
Or
or if I
lovely.
wanted to do Love Witch and offer it as a group program this time rather than a
Yeah.
one-on-one. And most people voted for Love Witch. And
Yeah.
so I went with that. And it's, I think that a big part of it also, especially if you're an entrepreneur who's
Mhm.
also an artist, and it's part of your purpose and your spiritual path, your soul path,
Mhm.
you choose to craft the offerings that also you need the most, and that
Yes.
are also going to work you in all of the ways that are
Mhm.
going to bring you deeper into the embodiment of that theme. And so I decided, okay, let's do Love Witch. Sounds good to me. And since I've made that choice, I have been like thrown and pulsating through the ringer of sex magic in ways that I
Mhm.
never have been before, in deeper ways, in more creative and spontaneous ways. And it's this offering. It's me, yes, and it's the gods, yes, but it's also this offering, the spirit of the offering that's pouring
Mhm.
through me and initiating me into the space holder that I need to be in order to hold this coven of people who are
Mhm.
coming to train to be love witches themselves. So I'm not the best person to ask like business
Mhm.
strategy from. Not really my forte, but I like to think, I've been doing this for 10 years now, so something's
Yeah.
working, and it's really just following the pulse of aliveness.
Yeah.
And I I love writing. What I find most on my
Mhm.
social media shares is when I do like really beautiful recounts of my personal stories with practicing
Mhm.
erotic magic or with romance. They get the most engagement, and I get the
Mhm.
most messages from people from those posts that are just like, wow, this
Yeah.
moved me so much. I felt so much emotion from this. And so right now I'm in the experiment of, okay, how do I translate storytelling into also being marketing for a business in a way
Yeah.
that uh, makes sense, in a way that people are able to
Mhm.
digest? Because sometimes people can't really, I think not all poetry is meant to be digestible.
Mhm. Mhm.
When we're marketing and we're selling,
Yeah.
people need to understand, unless they're the kind of person who's just so already dropped into their intuition and
Yeah.
follow. compulsive
Yeah.
alliances with the utmost trust, then
Yeah.
people need to know what the fuck they're signing up for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of my method right now.
Yeah. I love that because I think, yeah, in some ways that is a strategy. And I definitely speak from a person who is very much like, "Ooh, this sounds exciting to me. I'm going to do this now." So,
Yeah.
I am aware of that. And at the same time, like I love your writing. I love your posts. And even before this call, I was like deep diving into all of them just to get everything fresh into my mind. And I believe that the world is changing, the consciousness is evolving, and the way that people make decisions, what we call marketing, what we call business, is also shifting. And so for me, it's like, yes, that's storytelling. I mean, storytelling is marketing, right? Storytelling is the oldest form of human connection and communication. And sometimes I do think that when we approach from a very like business first space, things can start to feel dry or like devoid of that artistry, which is fine for certain beings or some types of businesses. But when we are so led by artistry as well, and the thing that we're creating is also our own initiatory path, right? Which is so beautiful and something that I have experienced time and time again in my own offerings as well, is that there is also a space for new ways of marketing and selling. And I see it in a lot of the people that I follow that I'm like, oh, there is a shift happening. And it's not yet, we're looking at a chart, standard deviation chart. We're not talking about this like big chunk in the middle. We are talking about the very, very early adopters, that final
Mhm.
10%. But it is happening. And that, I don't know, that gives me inspiration as hope as someone who is also so like, I will give you all the ideas, but don't talk to me about like a concrete strategy because that's just not how my being operates. I wish it
Mhm.
was sometimes. I wish it was. So before we go into more philosophical, dive into the juicy on this one realm of like business and offerings. So for anyone who doesn't know, all of Aubrey's links will be linked in the show notes, but Aubrey offers private experiences for couples, for one on ones, does ritual events and films. I got to watch one of those as well, and a bunch of other hosts online programs and courses. Um, and we were talking about the erotic renaissance, the Italy one. So I'm super curious about, because you said that was a big one to bring to life as one person. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember reading a post about how you lost money on that event. And I loved that post because it's also something that I feel like people don't talk enough about. But of course, if you're putting something to that scale in, there are resources that are going in, there are investments. So how did you handle that? What was that experience, both of bringing it to life and then realizing that, oh, I lost money in this?
I'm excited to dive into this. I really need to blow my nose. Are we able to like edit
Pause.
this? To, like,
Yes. Pause. This would be where we would insert an advertisement if I had sponsors. Go do your thing.
yeah, pulling it in.
So if anybody wants to sponsor this show. Oh, okay, we're back. We're back whenever
Okay,
you're ready.
so yeah, I lost about 15K from the erotic renaissance. It was a deep labor of love, and this is a pretty dramatic story. So
Hmm. Buckle
I
in.
had been buckle in. I had been dating who I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, have my children with, was engaged to for nearly 7 years. And when I birthed, he's an artist. I'm a muse.
Mm.
So that dynamic was there. We nerded out about the Renaissance and Sandra Botticelli and Simonetta Vespucci throughout our whole relationship. And so this idea was, it was my baby, but it was a bit of a co-creation as well.
Mhm.
Like I was going to be the head muse, he was going to be the head artist. And at that time, he was also quite a daddy for me in the sense
Mhm.
of financial support. And
Mhm.
so my my budgets, my lifestyle, everything, we'd been living together for the last 6 years, had created this whole life, all of these systems, and so I was making decisions based on that reality.
Mhm.
So when that reality changed and we separated probably about 7 or 8 months before the Renaissance was set to happen. This was something I was planning for 2 years, by the way.
Wow. Okay.
So we separated and everything changed. I moved from a town that was population 400. Many called it the place of the newlywed and nearly dead.
Woo.
We we had a beautiful home in the middle of the rainforest, just like so isolated, so quaint, so lush. And so I moved from that situation into a collective mansion in Vancouver.
Okay.
Huge, massive shift, massive change, and also one of the most expensive cities in the world to live in. Um, so that was happening. My life was crumbling. My heart was bleeding. And I was also all of a sudden having to, you know, show up to all of these meetings with these performers that I had hired to come be part of the erotic renaissance and show up with like the face that I had. I tried to be
Mhm.
smiley and have it together, but the fact of the matter was like I was sitting in the debris of the life that I had destroyed, consciously so. Um, and so that was kind of the foreplay of this
Mhm.
experience. And so financially, like I was having to make, castles ain't cheap.
No.
So I was like, making all of these payments, and then at that point too, it was just I was too far in to
Okay.
pull the plug. Um, had made too many plans and promises with people and catering and hosts to like it was just it didn't make sense to not do it at that point.
Mhm.
And I remember having a moment. I had just meditated and I was meditating on this whole experience and I was like, best case scenario, I sell this retreat out. It's everybody pays in full
Mhm.
and it's a great experience. Everything goes smoothly. It's relaxing. It's fun. Worst case scenario, I go bankrupt. So it was one of those
Mhm.
choices in life that was like art for the sake of art. It
Still.
I was and am a crazy person, and I like to dive off the deep end. When I have an idea, I go for it. I'm trying more now to embody a little bit more patience and sustainability.
Mhm.
But you know what? I like being crazy too. And
Yeah.
it all worked out anyways. But anyways, back to the drama. So the time is growing near and tickets are selling. About half of the people who are attending are part of the production.
Mm-hmm.
So they're either doing an exchange for the experience that I'm putting
Mm-hmm.
together for us, they're getting paid a little bit, or they're paying like half for a smaller cameo ish role.
Mm-hmm.
And the other half um, are people from all walks of life. There are rich people, there are people who are getting themselves more credit cards in order to make this experience happen for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's me who is saying no to some people applying, willing to pay in full,
Wow.
but I know that they weren't the right person to bring into this experience because it's also, it's an erotic magic ritual experience where we're all going to be in a castle together for a week, hopefully getting a little bit sexy with each other.
Yeah.
So, as people start joining, I'm also saying yes and no to people based on the chemistry that I feel may happen with
Mm-hmm.
participants. And so I didn't take the easy way out in this. I could have, filled it up and probably made more money if I would have just said yes to
Mm-hmm.
everybody, but it's not the curation that I like to do.
Yeah.
So I had the people in, and then it's Italy, and there's a lot of under the table business that happens there. And
Okay.
we'll never ever host something in Italy again with word of mouth contracts. I will for sure get
Yes.
everything written and like,
Pro tip for anyone thinking of hosting in Italy.
yeah. Do not trust the handsome Italian men. As sweet as their talk is, girls, trust me. So yeah, that's kind of, I won't go too much into that, but essentially I was promised something and promised a price and a service. And then I'm on my way. I have all of my bags packed with corsets and canvases and everything you could need at the erotic
Mm.
renaissance. And I have like a 16-hour layover in Paris. And I get myself a hotel so I can get some sleep. And while I'm there, I get some emails from this person that I'm doing business with in regards to the castle. And he's now telling me what I owe him,
Mm-hmm.
which is about $15,000 more than what he said it was going to be. And at this point, I'm supposed to be checking into this castle in 3 days and welcoming people in four.
Okay.
And so my options were somehow come up with this money that I don't have
Mm-hmm.
or cancel the event while people are already on their way. They're already traveling, they're already there.
Mm-hmm.
So I really only had one option,
Yeah.
and that was to somehow come up with 15K. And I'm traveling, I'm sleep deprived, I'm in the stress. If you've ever hosted an international retreat by
Mm-hmm.
yourself, like, there's so much going on in the mind already. And then suddenly I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, great. I'll come up with that money. Sure, no problem. And of course, I had a little back and forth with him, and I was like, can I do a payment plan like I did with the rest of the money that I've already given you? And he was just like, nope, we need it now. And so, by the grace of the gods and my dear friend Jay, who was the savior of the erotic renaissance in so many ways, And this was also a big lesson for me to, you know, drop the ego and ask for support, even if it
Yeah.
is crazy kind of support that makes you feel like, oh, I hate asking for this right now. But
Yeah.
I was messaging him and I told him what happened, and he was like, let me help you. And so between the both of us, we're like putting all of our different credit card numbers down. He's dishing out,
Wow.
thousands of dollars to me and this experience, and I'm putting whatever like I'm charging up my credit line, my credit cards just to make this experience happen at this
Yeah.
point. And I did pay him back, I'll have you know. So that felt good. But yeah, oh my gosh, I love you, Jay. Thank you.
Oh.
And so we made it work. We came up with 15K in the matter of like 12 hours. I
Wow.
got creative too. I was like messaging clients back home, being like, hey, I'll give you this deal, this package, yada, yada, all of this stuff.
Amazing.
So took care of that. All right, we're back on it. We're flying to Florence. I get to Florence. I'm waiting at the baggage claim. Wow, everybody's getting their baggage.
Oh
Can't
gosh.
believe how long it's taking for mine. They lost my luggage. So I, at this point, am just like, oh God, I don't even know. I don't even have any money to go buy anything. I'm in
Oh
like
my
my freaking
god.
yoga pants and sweater. I had my carry-on. There was that. So at least I had a toothbrush. But yeah, they lost my luggage, and then I had 2 days in Florence. And I was just trying to make the best of it. I had filled out a form for my bags in hopes that they would somehow magically appear. I would call the airports, everything's in Italian.
Oh
There's
gosh.
there's no organization in Italy.
Mhm.
Like, and it's part of the beauty of it. It's so freaking
Yeah.
chaotic. But when you're trying to do practical things that are pretty easy to do in other places, it's just like it's not going to happen there.
Mhm.
Um, so I am in my final hours in Florence before meeting with my team and driving to the castle. Everybody's kind of landing and coming to the center of the city to meet.
Mhm.
And I'm like going through thrift stores. I'm like, okay, like if I get two sets of lingerie, maybe this will make me feel better. Couldn't really find anything. I'm like, I don't have 80 euro to spend on this thing that I don't even really like. And then I go to an art store and also like all of the like kink implements and things for the play spaces,
Yeah.
lost. They're gone. So I'm
Okay.
like, all right, I'm in this art store. I'm getting like freaking clothespins and things that I think could be used for play. I'm getting pens and paper and canvas, and I'm like, all right, I surrender. This is the best that I can
Wow.
do. And I'm walking out of that art store, and then my phone starts ringing, and it's Jay. I answer, hey, Jay, what's up? He says, I think I found your luggage. I'm at the airport right now, but they need you to send a photo of your ID
Oh
with
my
like
god.
alongside a written note giving me permission to pick it up. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. Okay. I'm doing it right now. So I did it. And he got it. Jay, the savior,
Wow.
once more.
Jay, this angel.
He is a true earth angel. Like, oh my gosh. And
Oh.
he did our music at the Renaissance too. He's such a
Mhm.
beautiful, like, satyr, musician, mischievous man. And he's single, ladies.
Oh, ladies, we heard it here first.
So I go back into the art store. I return my stuff, get a refund. Woohoo! I got some more money in my wallet now. All of my stuff is on the way, and we make our way to the castle as a crew. And there, I could probably write a whole book about this experience because we get to the castle and so much more happens, including the fact that it's actually pretty haunted. And the
Oh,
first 4 nights were spent with, there were a few of us there who are like pretty tapped into the spirit
yeah,
realm, and we would get woken up at 2, 3 in the morning, witching hour, be
yeah.
led to different places in the castle, disperse the weird ass energy that was happening there. So not only were we, doing our rehearsals and preparing the space for people, we were also there doing freaking like ghost busting so that our guests could arrive to a nice energetic space. But yeah,
Oh,
that was huge, and that was a massive learning curve. And oh my gosh, it's so, I don't regret it. I
yeah.
regret some of the choices I made, as far as putting it together and how things were
Mhm.
done, for sure. But I learned so much for next time.
Wow. Wow. It is, I mean, wow. I feel like this could be a whole episode on its own. So I don't
Yeah.
want to go into so many questions around that, but I'm so, like you said, what an example of art for art's sake. And just kind of like, oh, I feel like sometimes in this journey of bringing creativity to life, whether it's a book or a theater piece or an experience or a festival or what it might be, when we hear the stories, and often because people are like selling something, right? So when we hear it, we hear the sanitized, romanticized, and not in the way that we're gonna switch into talking about romanticism soon, but like romanticized version of it. And then we have this where it's like,
Mhm.
actually, I'm in 12 hours, I'm pulling together 15,000 euros. I'm sleep deprived. I'm reaching out to clients. I'm having to do things that are so uncomfortable, so out of the realm of what I thought I was going to be spending my time doing, and ghost busting in the middle of the night. But just these things that are like sometimes the behind the scenes, or like what a creator does, what a curator of a space does for that space to then be enjoyed by others, isn't always so like recognized, because it is such a beautiful gift and an offering to be able to walk into an environment and have everything taken care of and know nothing of the logistics, where the like organizers are behind the scenes like, oh, fucking caterers are not showing up, like now we need like last minute catering. And I have been there, not to this
Mhm.
extent, but yeah, thank you for sharing, because I think sometimes we need those stories of like, actually, sometimes this is what it takes. Sometimes this is the initiatory process of bringing a vision this big to life, you know?
Yeah. And it's been a story that has felt scary to share. Like
Yeah.
most organizers and curators are not going to share their failures with you. They are not
Mhm.
going to share how deep in debt they are. They are not going to share all of the grit behind the beauty. And I understand why, because, it doesn't look as good.
Mhm.
People these days often are buying into somebody's lifestyle. They
Yes.
want the life that's easy, and I just like orgasmed my way to millions, right? Which, like, sure, great. I'm still super open to that
Yeah, yeah.
reality,
Yeah.
and it absolutely is possible. But there are also these more nuanced realities where you create, or the people that are curating an experience for you are
Mhm.
both tasting like the depths of despair and the peaks of ecstasy. And it's I'm still dismantling in my psyche why
Mhm.
it feels unprofessional, or like people might not want to work with
Mhm.
me when they know this, like, the kind of messiness that was behind
Right.
creating this massive experience.
Yeah.
And that's part of us moving into this new era, kind of what we spoke of earlier. Like, we are moving into a new era of marketing where you're not getting manipulated anymore. People are very smart. People
Smart.
no longer,
Yes.
yeah, people no longer just buy based off of like selling tactics. They want to
Yeah.
hear the story. They want to feel the humanness behind the
Yeah.
offering.
Yeah. And I think they also want to be able to anchor into the integrity. And that's something that throughout this whole interview is something that I feel you hold so well, right? Is this like piece of I will not sacrifice my personal integrity, even going so far as like not letting certain people in because of the integrity of the space or the integrity of the collective. And I think that that's also something that sometimes people don't want to share, is that they will allow someone into a program that is not ready or that doesn't gel and that is going to bring in some kind of into the fields that has been created. And I have a lot of respect for that, for this ability to be like, okay, maintain the integrity. And I think that is also something that people are more and more responding to,
Yeah.
which is why sometimes the orgasming the way to the millions, and also like you, I'm like, I'm super on board with that reality. I'm on board with a lot of ease. I experience a lot of ease in my life. I feel like that's one of the things I'm seeding in the world in this lifetime. But the orgasming the way to the millions sometimes can be a little bit like, well, like, it's like the overnight success story. It takes 10 years to build an overnight success, as they say. And it's like, okay, what came before that? Like, what were you doing before you were orgasming your way to millions?
Mhm, mhm.
I love that. So thank you for sharing.
Thank
Um,
you.
I could get into so many beautiful conversational portals and holes with you. I'm really curious, since you brought up Jay, this amazing. I mean, if we want to, maybe we do like a slide, an interlude with some pictures of Jay for the ladies.
I would love that. I'll get his consent when we log off here, but I think that'd be so fun and cute.
Jay, we were gonna get you all the ladies. This is Jay. Look at those warm eyes, that deep gaze, oof, right into my soul. This stylish scarf thrown over the shoulder, the casual look away, so artsy, we love. And look at this, how adorable is this? So playful, so fun. Jay loves helicopters, I love helicopters. If you love helicopters, maybe you want to connect with Jay. Scan the QR code on the screen or find him on Instagram at UniBalloon. Come on, friends, let's make this podcast a true community experience. Let's play Cupid, matchmaker, friend finder, all the things. Let's get back to it. Something that I'm very curious about and I see and I've experienced in my own life is the power of creativity, and in this case maybe ritual and eros, to create community. And I know that this is something that you do often because a lot of the work you do is live experiences and events, or even the screening of the erotic film of yours that I went to watch was like a community event, right? It was a way of like bringing people together around art, around creativity. And so I'm curious if that's something you've always consciously done, if it's something that just happens around you, if it's something that you prioritize in your life. I also saw your birthday posts recently and your friends creating all this beautiful like ritual and celebration for you, and this idea of elevating our community connections and our friendships and our partnerships to this like to these ecstatic, romantic, magical, quote unquote escapist realms. But they're not, because people are really living them, right? You're living them. So I think a lot of people yearn for community like that. How did it come about in your life, and what do you do to sustain it?
It's something that I didn't taste until about 11 years ago when I moved to Canada and I moved to Nova Scotia. And before that, I had friends, but they were few and far in between. And it didn't ever really, like, I still always felt like an outsider a bit.
Mhm.
And when I moved to Nova Scotia, I, for one, even though now living in Vancouver, Nova Scotia feels quite conservative in comparison.
Mhm.
Nova Scotia felt so liberated compared to where I was coming from in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And so I met this a few people that were involved in this group of friends, this community. This is who I created the holistic center with. And there
Mhm.
were like 5 or 6 of us living upstairs, and then downstairs was all converted into the like workshop and movement space. I'm such a little cold right now. Excuse me. um, so it was there that I really started to finally, for the first time in my life, feel belonging. And
Mm.
like I was not only accepted, but encouraged to be more of my full freaky self. And
Mhm.
this was where I joined my first coven. This is where I started practicing sex magic. This is where I had my first experiences in conscious group sex. This is where I found my gifts and my passion as a curator, a cultivator of sensuous energy. And it was such a fertile space. And like many of those kind of more hippie esque communities, it
Mhm.
was very transient.
Yes.
So we had a really strong, good thing going for about 2 to 3 years. And then people started
Mhm.
traveling, moving. And so the group became smaller and smaller. And it wasn't quite the same magic. Still beautiful. I also got involved in my long term relationship
Okay.
there and kind of got sucked into that world of union as two rather than union as all, and got
Yes.
really cozy. And they're like, let's just stay home and cuddle and make love and bake bread. It's so nice,
Yeah.
uh, which is great for a time, but we need community.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was in that world with him for quite a while, and we moved around a lot. I traveled a lot. I was in Europe. I was in on Vancouver Island. I was on the Sunshine Coast, and because I was moving every like 6 months to a year, and not just moving neighborhoods, like moving
Mhm.
quite long distances, um, it's been pretty hard for me to nourish like deep long-term friendships.
Yeah.
And this is something that I'm really choosing to be aware of right now and
Mhm.
stay in touch with people even if they're across the globe. Let people now know how important they are to you and how much you love them, how they
Mm.
inspire you, what you appreciate about them. And foster these connections and this
Mhm.
intimacy, because otherwise it just dissolves, which
Yeah.
I've experienced. I had that community in Nova Scotia and was like, wow, I feel belonging for the first time ever, and I lost that.
Yeah.
Um, so my last nearly 2 years in Vancouver, I've been building up community more, and
Mhm.
I have had a really strong support system in this. One of my dear friends and also work partners, Nathaniel Jack, he's the
Mhm.
director of that film that you
Okay.
watched.
Yeah.
We worked together. We lived together in the mansion where we created events for our community. He
Mm.
is he's a magnet and he's a networker, where
Mhm.
I'm a home builder.
Okay.
So I find my community building skills don't so much lie in the like going out and meeting new people. It doesn't
Mhm.
flow so easily for me, but once people are in front of me or in a space that
Mhm.
I've created, whether it be like a home or a more professional event, I I make people feel so welcome. I
Mhm.
ensure that people are able to feel like they belong.
Mhm.
So he and I make a very good team. We're actually building, it's launched this week actually, the beta version of it called the Lucid app. And
Oh,
the house
amazing.
that we lived in was the Lucid Mansion. And
Okay.
we've been transitioning away from that home, but now we're putting everything on the app. And that is a community center for people to network, for you to be able to choose topics of interest for you, whether that be meditation, or if you are interested
Mhm.
in my work in like Love Witch, there'll be a channel for the Love Coven in there. There will be
Mhm.
all of our community events that we're hosting. There will be the Cinema Scorpius channel that is
Amazing.
the organization of our
Yeah.
erotic films, and so we're really excited about that. It's going to be a hub. There's like tokens in it too. It's kind of like the cool version of the Girl and Boy Scouts, where you get badges of honor and you get to say that you've been through these certain initiatives.
Oh.
So it's still in its sort of like, we've been working on it. Nathaniel's been doing so much of the practical things. I'm just like, la la la, he
Yeah,
creates
yeah.
beauty. Thank the Lord for him. But yeah, we're still in the like initial stages of getting everything launched, but it's going to be
Yeah.
open like very soon.
I love that. I love that. And that, yeah, just the intentionality that it takes to build connections and maintain them. And I've spent the past 3 years living in a place that is like such a little hippie hub, conscious community hub, and has a lot of transient people. And yeah, that idea, I've always grown up in like transient spaces. So I feel like people often ask me, they're like, how do you have so many friends or how do you maintain so many relationships? And it's like, well, I maintain them. Like it's that. Like they just need to be maintained. It's like maybe some friends we speak twice a year, but when we speak, we really connect and we really see each other. And then there are other people that it's like, okay, yeah, we're like in more constant connection, but it does take nurturing and tending to. And I feel like sometimes, whether it's the curse of our addiction to convenience, people don't really want to do that. It's just like, I just want it delivered to me. Like me refusing to get on apps and being like, where is my king? Charming. Like not doing anything. It's like, you should come to my door. Excuse me. What is happening? Um, so you do so many different, and we'll wrap it up on this note, but I think this is something that a lot of my audience is really interested in. I have many interests, multi-passionate, multi-talented, multi-gifted being, and you have really created your career out of this. You make erotic films, you host experiences, you do one-to-one rituals. Now you're developing an app, which I love. You write erotic stories. Yeah. So random, but I love that also because I like have an idea for an app, and it's on my list of like things I want to create in the world, right? And so, one, has that ever been like a challenge for you to navigate these multiple passions? Does it feel very cohesive? Does it feel easy? What would you say to someone that's in the like, oh, I have so many different interests and I don't know how to bring them together phase of their journey?
You know, I'm going to say something that's fresh in my mind, that I was sitting in the hot tub with one of my clients last night, and talking,
Y'all,
and
we
he,
live in a world where you can just sit in hot tubs with your clients. So if you're worried
yeah,
about being realistic, you're probably living in your plane of existence. So just up.
mhm, mhm. Anything is possible. Business in the jacuzzi is one of my faves, and he is such like he's so good at strategy and seeing. And he told me this practice that he does for this specific, like being cohesive in business and
Mm.
ensuring that he was like, you know what, 80% of what you do, there's probably other people who could do it much better and more efficiently. But there's a 20% inside of you that has such a freaking gift. And if you were to focus just on that 20% and make that your full thing, that's
Mm.
when success comes. And he was speaking to me, but he was also just speaking about people in general. And I said,
Yeah.
okay, how do you do that? And he said every day he writes down, like at the end of the day, he writes down what he's done, and just like different activities, calls, emails, yada yada, creativity, everything. And then he'll take the time to circle the two or the three that he felt the most lit up by. He was like, if you do this and you do it for a strand of time, you will
Mhm.
notice the cohesion, you will notice the patterns within that,
Mhm.
what you're not only loving to do, but things that, aren't taking you a zillion hours to complete. Unless you like, if you're just fully in it and
Yeah,
your
yeah.
love all the time in that. But if you're like trying to do this thing and it's taking you forever to do it, um, you could probably outsource that and focus on what you love doing and what you're actually good at doing.
Mhm.
So that really spoke to me. I was like, I am definitely going to start doing that.
Mhm.
And I think as a artist, it's also really important for us to keep at least one outlet of artistry that is not monetized.
Yes. Yes. I fully agree with that.
I love making money from creating these epic erotic ritual experiences. I love
Yeah.
making money from writing.
Yeah.
I love creating jewelry and doing
Oh.
painting, and nobody really knows that because I'm not
Yeah.
advertising it, because I'm not selling it. I'm really
Yeah.
good at it. I make like really epic freaking crystal harness bondage sets that are so sexy. People would love
Ooh.
these, but I'm not going to monetize on it because it's really important for us to keep those outlets of artistry that are just for the sake of art and for
Yes.
ourselves and our passion and just having fun with it. So that's been my like how I stay sane in this
Mm,
creative entrepreneurship.
I love that. Oh, I love that so much. I fully agree. There are two very practical approaches, which I really, really appreciate and I love. All right, Aubrey, I'm going to wrap it up for the interview at that because we could go in and in and in. And I'm sure we'll have you back at some point for an interview part two. Be sure
Love.
to follow along and check out all of Aubrey's offerings. They're amazing. She's an incredible facilitator and space holder. And if you're looking to connect more deeply with your own erotic energy, with your own expression, your sensuality, with ritual, with sex magic, I highly, highly recommend. Is there anyone or anything you want to plug in specific, Aubrey? I'm not sure when this episode will be out, but overall in general.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, right now we're starting Love Witch in
Hmm.
October, early
Okay.
October, and I am certain it is something that will be run again. I'm always open to one-on-one work or working with couples, whether that be online or in person. I travel. So there's many options. Just follow the links and see what is abound in the moment's time.
Amazing.
Perfect.
Aubrey, thank you so much for your time, for your genius, for this beautiful conversation, and for being here today. I really, really appreciate it.
It's been such an absolute pleasure. You're one of my favorite people to muse with.
Mm, love it. Love music. All right, folks, we will see you on the next. Oh, no, my mouse. See you on the next one.